guys, let's jump straight into it. What I want to know is traditionally, historically, how have SEO and UX worked together, but more so as well, what have been your perceptions of the other digital marketing discipline? Before we knew that that sort of integrated, unified approach would work as an agency.
Shall I kick this one off, Elliot? So I think for me, SEO is coming from like a traditional design background, from when websites were built, in a couple of days and they ran on a modem. It was a good time. SEO has always traditionally been usually within a creative agency, a bit of an afterthought, actually. It's probably one of the most overlooked activities in terms of the value it can add and, the collaboration between teams. I've always found that typically, unless you're working for a really large agency that has an SEO team in-house, even if that's outsourced, they tend to work pretty independently of one another, and it can be quite a turbulent supply chain, I'd almost say, in terms of the information moving backwards and forwards. And it's a shame because, it's the person that loses really, I would say, is actually the client, because they see an amazing visual. And as creatives or experienced designers, we sell them a dream. And then when you turn it on its head, the SEO team also optimizing the site, they will have some really keen objectives as well. They'll be looking at ROI, trying to boost sales, conversions, improve visibility, all of these things happening at once. But they're just, what will happen is either a site will become optimized by, let's say, by an SEO person, and then it will move into the creative team or agency, whichever, or vice versa. But there'll be compromise on one side or the other, which can kind of confuse the results. And I would say pretty much over the last 12 to 15 years, that's actually been a pretty consistent theme in terms of the way that I've seen the two parties interacting with one another. It would just be good to see them come together to get better results. What do you think about that, Elliot?
Yeah, I think you've hit on a really good point there, in that it's always seemed one of compromise, and there's also been like that kind of clashing, that it was one or the other. So it would be, as a creative agency, it would be, we're building a website that works for UX, and we'll maybe get an SEO person involved later down the line. And we're coming from an SEO agency, it would be, this page, we want to rank in search results, it looks amazing, but we'll have, we better just check it's got everything you needed for a UX or a creative standpoint. And it was often one or the other. And we'll have that, and it came to a compromise that maybe we'll add that little bit to UX, but actually we're going to stick to all our core principles of SEO. And it was that siloed working. And I know when I first joined Hallam, we'd get you guys involved on website builds, but maybe not on some of our ongoing client retainer work.
Yeah,
it would be ad hoc questions. So Joe, if I had the mobile number here, do you think that'll improve conversion rates? It wasn't actually having those conversations from the start.
Yeah, I remember it used to almost come. I remember someone actually came to me with a piece of paper at one point. It's a list of demands, right? A list of SEO demands that must happen immediately. And I just remember getting a pen out and just writing down. I was like, nope, not going to happen. Nope, not going to happen. Nope, going to damage conversions. Nope, going to ruin the design. And before long, I'd actually carved a third out of the list without even thinking about what the implications of what that would be to the client, to your results, the overall picture, the strategic objective that we're working towards. And it's a little bit, it was a bit naive is the best way I could say it. And there's just the communication was just a bit on the fringe.
And just to clarify, that wasn't me that came with the list.
Elliot came with his book of demands instead. No, that's really cool, guys. It's nice to sort of give everyone a little bit of an insight in terms of the way that historically, not just us as an agency, but we've seen across the sector, and whether you're in-house or whether you're agency side, there have been those siloed approaches to these two disciplines. I suppose taking it right back to the start, and why should someone actually implement SEO, and why should someone implement UX on their website? And whilst we are trying to achieve the same overarching objective, there can be sometimes different goals. And Elliot, you mentioned then about the core principles of SEO. Obviously, in order to achieve those sort of marketing objectives, whether it might be more conversions or more leads, SEO plays a key role in driving traffic to the website, but obviously UX is more about when that person lands. So how do those sort of core principles of SEO, how much do they have to be impacted when taking into account UX, but still wanting to drive as much traffic as possible?
Yeah, so me and Joe were talking about yesterday. It's a good analogy is if you're in a 100-meter sprint, to even enter the race, you have to have SEO. Otherwise, you're going to be running around your garden on your own, not even in the chance of winning an Olympic medal. But once you're in that race, once you've got the user to your website, that's when the UX is actually going to win at you, and that'll be the one that actually converts it. But there are some core principles of SEO that you need on your page to even enter that race. It would be a keyword focus on your page, headings that are keyword focused, enough copy to give Google the idea of what your page is actually about, internal links to other pages that are important on your website, and the most important clash that we often have is that Joe might come to me with a couple of years ago now, we wouldn't do this now, but a couple of years ago, he might come to me with a page that I say, Joe, this looks absolutely beautiful. Where the hell am I going to put all my content? And he'd be like, oh, this little box down here. And I was like, that's just not enough, because people like rich, detailed content that answers the user's questions. So we need to have that on the page as standard. And there is that constant clash about how you present that content, where it is on the page. That's probably the biggest principle or clash that you have when it comes to SEO and UX.
Yeah, in terms of some of the, just to kind of break that down a little bit, I can give you just a couple of examples in terms of the things that, let's say, organic SEO would accommodate, and then kind of like what some of the counterbalance arguments would be from the other side, if that makes sense, that causes some of these discussions. So the copy one is a great example in because, Elliot, sorry, it's because basically it's, what can happen is it's actually the density of the copy of what you bring onto the page. So you're saying, right, okay, I've got heading structure, my key phrases are optimized, and I need to inject and enrich this copy with synonyms and everything to kind of make this work for your objectives. What tends to happen though is that when you take this large body of content and put it on a page, is in the past, the page has actually read like it's written for search engines. And it's also had a very kind of like direct impact on the layout, the overall comprehension. And then you can even take a little bit of a hit as well on some other things. Like, for example, as the rules of SEO can be very specific, you know, that they want fast load times, they want the page to score well, and it can be a very methodical way to work, but sometimes it can lead to like an overloaded interface because there are lots of pages. When really, you know, one thing I always say is I want to keep everything as simple as possible. So that can be a challenge, even something for my ego to swallow, actually. My ego takes a hit. I think most importantly, it's copy. The copy is king for me. It's the delivery of that the crafting of the copywriter by a professional copywriter that is the difference between an SEO marketeer optimizing a page and a page being collaboratively designed between a team of specialists towards a goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd love to get into copy in a little while with the both of you to see what you guys think. Just going to take a short moment just to address the audience and let everyone know that if you have any questions throughout this webinar, please do drop them in the comments box. We will have time at the end for a bit of a Q&A, but if anything pops up, please ask it. That old tale when you're in school, if you've got a question, it's probably something that someone else is thinking about as well. I can't get the poll to work at the moment, but the question was basically around what are you currently investing in? And when I say investing, it's not necessarily a budget, but it could be time. Could be a mixture of time, energy, and budget. But if you could pop in the comments now, you know, are you currently investing in SEO? Are you currently investing in UX, or are you investing in a combination of both? That would be amazing for us to know, as the conversation will get into that naturally as we move forward. Also, you know, one of the things that you guys were talking about then is the length of copy and how the user interacts with that copy once they've landed on that page. We know that Google are taking more emphasis. Google's algorithm, I believe it's the Core Web Vitals update next year, which comes out in May 2021, is going to be paying serious attention to how the user interacts with the page when they're on there as well, which gets you back onto that point of copy and also micro copy, or copy when it comes to headers or maybe subheaders, and how much do those things actually affect not just an SEO when it comes to maybe Google snippets, but also when the user lands on the page. We know a lot of people are time poor and they'll scroll through the page and they'll just sort of pick out on the big copy. Elliot, we'll start with you from a search point of view. You know, how important are those sort of micro copy, those touch points, those moments when a user lands on the page for you?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that both SEO and UX have the same, and Google have the same outcome and the same objectives, is that we all want the user to find what they are searching for. So, and it's just how you get to that and how you balance that. So having your keyword in your H1 and in some H2s down the page, that is always going to be really important for SEO. And it's about balancing that with making the copy creative enough and enticing enough for the UX, for someone to click on it. So you could have a heading that includes the keyword, but also it makes sense why it's there. It's very obvious when you see a SEO focused page that they've just peppered it throughout the headings and throughout the call to actions. And you'll be able to spot it a mile off, because it will feel unnatural. It won't feel like someone is speaking to you about this service or this product and asking you, do you want to find out more or do you want to buy it? It's very obvious.
Can I just put like a really simple chip in with a simple example? So a great example of this would be, and we can't wait to help you with your marketing services in Nottingham, because we understand marketing services in Nottinghamshire, because we are the experts in the region of Nottingham. Like that's, so I'll end now, but that's just like back in the day, that was like a classic, like that kind of thing.
And the thing is, Google's algorithm wasn't as smart as it is now. So that kind of stuff did work. Like there was a reason why people were doing it, because they were optimizing for search engines rather than the user. And there is still an element now. I'm not going to say that if you write a page that's cryptic and purely UX focused, that Google's going to find it and rank it, because it won't. You still need to have some basic principles. But Google's algorithm is getting smarter and better at understanding what the user actually wants. And that's why UX is becoming so important, because Google is wanting to understand what the user is actually wanting to do.
I think that's a super important point, isn't it? And I think a lot of people can be overwhelmed by trying to impress Google's algorithm, when actually, if you create copy, and I suppose this goes for SEO and UX, but it goes for any marketing really. Ultimately, you're creating for the user, you're creating for someone else to consume, and making sure that it's friendly for them to consume as well, and that they get, like you said, that they get what they're looking for, because that's what Google are ultimately leaning towards moving forward, is when the person lands on your website, do they get what they're looking for? And if they do, you're going to rank better. You're going to get more traffic, because Google knows that works for that search query. Joe, I wanted to just sort of ask you a very similar question to ask Elliot, if you can expand on it, about that micro copy and those sort of multiple touch points, or those mini experiences that someone has on a website, and how important are they to actually reaching the end goal of a conversion or a sale?
Okay, so the landscape, I'd say probably over the last 5 years, it's shifted like a great deal. It was shifting anyway with the emergence of mobile, but now we really are, we're basically working within like an economy where people they're not willing to dedicate, or they have the mental capacity to dedicate more than a couple of seconds of their time to actually attain visual recognition. of what they've searched for is right for them. So the difficulty with that is that within, let's say, the first 5 seconds of landing on the page that they've come from Google, the expectation is it's this high, like it's at the very top immediately. So they're looking for a couple of things. They're looking for a short, concise, like value proposition statement that isn't laden with key phrases, but just tells the user exactly what the company do and what they can do for me. Let's swing it around to myself, what they can do for me as a customer. And I apologize for the dogs. I apologize for the dogs every day to someone at some point.
The benefits of work from home. At least you've got a dog companion with you.
Yeah, two. Anyway, so the point is that you've got this small window of time to communicate your offer, and then you need to be directional with your micro copy, like straight away. So it's really, really important that, you know, the relationship of the key phrase enriched text that we create just complements it. It just needs to seamlessly fit into it. It's almost as though kind of like that when that micro copy was created, we knew about these key phrases and we actually tried to break it free from that like silo that it was in before. So to humanize that copy, to make it useful for the user. It's ridiculous. I mean, I say this to clients all the time. The intelligence level or the IQ level of a user browsing your site is 86, and 86 is the lowest it can go, because people are now in a sedate state when they browse the internet. They don't engage with it the way they used to back in the day. And as millennials come forward, I expect to see an increase in that lack of attention span. So where I'm going with this basically is that basically users need to be able to scan and select based on their preferences, and try and avoid what I call a brick. A brick meaning a very dense block of copy, like the Bible is probably the best example, because if you open the Bible, it's chocker. It's absolutely chocker.
I think that's interesting, and that can be built into your ideal SEO page as well. So you can have, if you have a service page that is about digital marketing services, you have that as your header, and then you'll have what is digital marketing services, how does our process work, what are the benefits, and you have that very clear structure, and you can include your keywords that you want, and you're adding that a lot of rich text around what it is, how it can help you, which is what the user wants when they're landing on the page. But if they want to scan, I'm in a constant battle with any person you take on, any client you take on, is that they know their industry so well, and they think that other people might know it as well, or because they've already got that knowledge of their industry. You've got to treat people like they are going to scan your page for 5 seconds to try and understand what the service is about and how it can benefit them. And you have to find the balance between doing that in a UX kind of way and an SEO that's still optimized for SEO.
Yeah, I'd actually just finish off almost to reinforce your point, Elliot, and just say there's the clarity within which businesses communicate with their customers, like through their brand and the way they position themselves and communicating their core offer, is just so important now. It's never been more important than ever. Like brand is actually having a resurgence to actually reinforce and help people communicate these messages, but also enable these tools along the way.
Yeah, I love all those points, and it kind of got me thinking around, as marketers, we're so ingrained to make sure that things are perfect in our eyes when we put them out, and often when we're talking about website pages, whether it be the home page or a blog or a landing page, a product page, we go through everyone knows it, we do something called proofreading. We open the page and we proofread it. But how many marketers are actually proof scanning their page? How many marketers are sitting back with the mindset of a customer, a mindset of a user, thinking, I'm just going to look at this very quickly and see what I pick up on, scroll through it, open it up on my mobile, open it up on my iPad, actually expose themselves to their website as a user would, sitting on the couch at home, which is probably a lot easier to do now than when we were in the office. Is that just me talking madness, or is there a space for proof scanning in the future?
There is a huge space for it. Now, in larger agencies, there you can have entire departments or small teams dedicated specifically to this task. But it's, you know, it's never been more important than ever to almost like collaborate with your clients and proofread it with the client and make sure that they feel that they're being represented as a business, but also just to collaborate, you know, if possible, if you can get access to the user base themselves, just so they can read it and ensure that they can comprehend. It's all down to comprehension. You know, I always ask myself two things. First, can I understand what it's about? Am I going to have to work for the information? And can I make an informed purchasing decision at the end of the information that's been delivered to me? And if all three of those things have been met, then it's more than likely that I'm going to be a bit more curious and take time to switch gears from digesting short form content to long form content. And that's the killer moment, is when you get them to switch over that little invisible line there, because once you've got them over that line, you've got them. Like, you've got a potential customer on the hook, basically. So that's basically what I'd say about that, Kieran, to be honest.
Yeah, I think proof scanning is something I'll do on all the content that gets written or produced on the website that I'm managing. Having a copywriter proofread it in terms of like spelling, and you'll do it as well. But there is an element of, okay, this page is about this. How easy is it for me to access this information and to understand what this page is trying to say? Because I'm the average user. What I would say actually is, on a separate point, is that you as a marketeer, you need to understand the audience you're marketing to. So it may be that you sell software and the person that is going to be the sale for you, is going to be converting, actually knows loads about the topic you're talking about. And they know loads about, they almost know as much as the person who's trying to sell it to them. So in that sense, you might not be as babyish with your copy and they're self-explanatory. So it's important to understand what your market audience is as well with that.
Yeah, and like Joe sort of touched on about, you know, where they're at in that sales funnel, and, you know, almost as you mentioned, Joe, getting them on the hook. And, you know, if you can identify the point where they are, let's say, on the hook, it's then exposing them to that sort of additional information as part of that consideration phase as well. Amazing. We've had some questions come in. One from Alan. Alan, I would ask if you could give us a little bit more context around the troubles that you're going through, and we can definitely dig into that a little bit towards the end. Another question has come in. I love this question because we get asked it so many times by our clients. How do you get non-marketers to understand that the value content should be based on customer needs and not telling the customer what you want them to know about your company? And we've been saying it for the last half an hour in terms of you write content based on what the customers want to know. Now, I will caveat that with, there is definitely a place for telling customers about your company, the product pages, the about us. But let's stick to sort of this question in terms of, is there anything that you can do to persuade maybe decision makers internally to start creating content for actual user pain points and user needs?
Yeah, it's actually quite an easy one to address, actually. So I'm a real sucker for like coming up with like scenarios and stuff. But typically I'd say to whoever it is that I'm engaging with, I would be very clear about what the benefits are of putting the customer before the client. Within our team, within the UX team, we actually got some kind of like our own set of like sub core values, right? And one of them is put the customer's customer before the customer. It's like, because we have to remember that to help the customer, we have to first service the needs of their customers. And if those needs, if the customer cannot comprehend, understand the value being offered, the product, the service, or if there isn't even a tiny hint of what are you going to do for me, because that's all people care about, is what are you going to do for me? And if you can't answer that, then you are leaking money. So what I mean by that is that there will somewhere within your marketing data or within your impressions of people that have been on the site, there will be a segment of users who bounced because they did not feel confident, reassured, or that they were being put first. So it's a bit like this, right? So you go to McDonald's and you order a burger, right? They're like, oh yeah, great, £3 please, and you hand over £3, and they're like, great, and they just kind of usher you off. Now, if you, let's say, stood them on his head and you're like at the Ritz, and a waiter comes up to you, he's like, hello sir, I can offer you this, 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 and this. Which one would you like? I'd like this one, please. Excellent, I'll show you to your table. And in a way, it's that hand holding that reinforce the actual putting the customer's needs first is the hand holding that a business should do to help assist them in making an informed buying decision. It's the most important thing. There will be articles on Medium. I'm open to actually having a search after and see if I can find a couple for you, just that Kieran can send across to you, that actually demonstrate the importance of this. And there'll probably be online some cheat sheets. I don't know if you've ever said you're going to go to a conference, but there's like how can I persuade my boss to go to this conference and the value it will add? How can you persuade me to spend that £400? It's almost like you need to just have that in your back pocket, like all the time. And just don't be afraid to get it out either, because these things are based on facts. It's not subjective. It's been proven time and time again.
I think Joe touched a good point there when he said, if you've got, you obviously you showcase the value by providing proof that if someone is doing it, then it works. So if you've got data that points to that this many people are dropping off, find out why. You've got analytics data that will say that these people are converting, or you see a competitor doing really well, and you actually see that actually their content isn't then just blabbing on about how good their company is and what they think you want them to know. They are actually solving user problems. They are talking about what the customer wants. Try and gather as much evidence and data to go along with what Joe's saying around maybe people who are leaders in their industry around this type of stuff. It's all about trying to provide that proof, and the data, I think, and educating them on that and why that's actually valuable. That's the hardest part, but there is the data and the articles and the information out there. Just need to find it.
I think that the 2 points are spot on. Joe, to sort of summarize what you said, was basically, why not go to that person in your company, that non-marketer, and ask them, why should your needs come before our customers? And then also what Elliot said about making sure you've got that backup of data or a backup of thought leaders' knowledge to say, it's not just me saying this. All the experts online, I can send you these, I can send you this and that. They're all saying it. I think going even, one step further to a third element of that is, what data do you actually have yourself as a marketer? We can all carry out market research, and have you done any of that? I'll break off in very slightly for a minute and tell you a quick story about when that's actually happened to me in a previous role. And I came to the board with an idea for a new product, and they laughed at me. They thought that's never going to work. And I thought, it hit me, but I didn't have any sort of data or backup or thought leaders or nothing. It was just my idea. A year later, I went back with exactly the same product idea, but I had data from influencers online. I had screen grabs of customers asking for that product. And I made this presentation with the positives and the negatives of launching it. And because I've put thought into it, and the decision makers could see that I put thought into it, it then got signed off. And before we know, within 3 or 4 months, the product was in 16 countries around the world. So just being prepared for that conversation, not going into it thinking, I'm going to win this. I'm going to win this sort of mini internal battle because I'm right, but going into it with the whole arsenal to make sure that you can get that person on your side. We've got another question coming in. Basically, an extension of one earlier, which was they are doing a combination of both SEO and UX. he says there's too many cooks. We're trying to balance non-web savvy market and import with SEO company implementing blogs that aren't factually correct, which that sounds like a blog which isn't factually correct, and it sounds like a separate SEO company to people who are actually implementing the UX. So I think moving on to, we at the start we said we're going to do past, present, and future. I think by us talking a little bit about how we do things at Hallam might actually answer that question. So I'll open it up to Elliot or Joe, but we talked about, let's start with Joe. Joe, you mentioned being approached at your desk by SEO specialists and experts with lists of demands that you should do. How are you seeing that relationship now, and how has it changed?
You asked the wrong webinar participant to kick off with this. Elliot's your man. Elliot, talk to us about RankBrain.
Yeah, I guess what's changed in what we originally were doing, and then why is that changing? Like Kieran, if you pull up slide 6, I'll kind of go through I guess the two big algorithmic changes in how Google is understanding what this user actually wants. And I'm going to try and simplify it as much as possible and give you an example to kind of reinforce what RankBrain is, why it's important. But essentially, RankBrain was launched in 2015 as part of Google's core algorithm. It's a machine learning algorithm, and it has two key features. One is to understand search queries better. So it goes beyond matching a keyword to a page, and it tries to actually understand the intent behind the keyword. And the second is it measures how people are reacting with the search results. So are people clicking through to your website? Are they not? Are they clicking on competitors' websites? Are they, once they're on the website, are they reading the page for a couple of minutes? Are they bouncing straight off? Are they going back to the search results? Are they visiting multiple pages on your website? Are they filling out contact forms? Are they calling you? And essentially what RankBrain is trying to do is figure out what the user actually means by the search, just like a human would. So in terms of how this works, got a nice little diagram here, and I'll try and give you an example from, let's say if I was typing in black shoes. So traditionally, if I typed in black shoes into a search engine, Google will go, okay, this person wants to know about black shoes. I've got this web page that mentions black shoes 20, 30 times. It's got some quality links from trusted websites pointing to it. I think the user is going to want to read this, and it shows me a blog article of how to wear black shoes, or your guide to wearing black shoes. The difference in terms of what RankBrain does is it pre-qualifies that search query to try and understand actually what does the user mean by typing in black shoes. So it goes, have I seen this query before? Have I seen similar queries? And they might go, yes, actually, people have typed in brown shoes before. They've typed in large black shoes before. And they'll go, okay, so what did I serve them last time? I served them 4 e-commerce pages and a couple of blogs on how to wear large black shoes. And then Google will go, okay, what did people click on when they were served those search results? Well, actually, everyone was clicking on this e-commerce page that was listed 5th. So then Google will go, okay, people actually want e-commerce pages. They actually want to buy black shoes. So I will showcase the e-commerce pages. And what do people want from an e-commerce page? They probably want a big selection of products. They want prices listed. They want maybe a trusted website with secure payment. So that information is then built back into RankBrain. So it's constantly learning about what people want from the keywords and what the actual search intent behind that is. And why that's significant for SEO and UX is that it was the first time that machine learning was introduced to actually understand how the user interacts with the web page once they're on it, on how so user experience stats were being measured and recorded and fed back in. So Google will rely less on these traditional ranking factors, and it will rely more and more, as it gets better and better, on actually how the user is interacting with the page. So when they're on the web page, that is so important for your UX to be spot on, because Google's actually tracking that, and Google is feeding that back into your search results. So that's kind of RankBrain and why it's important for UX. There was another update called BERT that was recently. I'm aware I'm blabbing you with just Google algorithm updates, but BERT was introduced last year, and it was all about natural language processing. So the difference with BERT is that it read what was on the page, and it tried to understand what the context of those words were. So Kieran, if you go on to the slide 7, which should be just the next slide. This is an example Google gave you of pre-BERT and post-BERT. So if I typed in, can you get medicine for someone at pharmacy? Before, Google would see it as, can you get medicine? So it'd be like, actually, they want to see, where can I get my prescription refilled? Where actually the for someone part was super, super important for the keyword, can you get medicine? So it actually contextualizes the keyword to include for someone as well. So for someone are actually quite common words, but depending on where they are in the sentence and what's on the content on the page, they provide a lot more relevancy. So then the new search results would be, they realize they're actually you're wanting to fill up a prescription for someone else. So these updates are actually pretty huge over the last 5 years for people to understand that what the user is searching for. So the algorithm is getting smarter and smarter. So they will understand more about what the user is searching for. So us as SEOs and UX people, we have to work within that changing algorithm. That's why it's more and more important.
Wow, that's amazing.
Is that explained in simple enough terms?
It is, and you know, it's really powerful, isn't it? Sort of, we started the conversation around copy, and I think a lot of people's mind goes to copy when they think of SEO. That, you know, oh, I need to create copy for this page, and there's that sort of battle between UX, which is how the user going to interact. And actually, what you've just explained there, Elliot, is in the past we would write copy for the search engines, whereas now we're creating pages that answer user problems, and that needs a combination of both. And that's actually what Google are tracking now, is that ability for your website to solve the user's search query, which is a problem or a question or whatever it might be. Joe, where does UX fit into that? You know, once that person does hit the page, and how are you going to start solving those problems or answering those questions?
Well, the main thing is it's more of an exercise about rallying around a common goal. So what I mean by rallying around a common goal is that what's happened is that we now share the same goal. Because for, let's say, a page to rank well in Google, they now have to take the actual experience beyond the search engine into consideration. So basically, my role effectively in this scenario is the person arrives on the site, and it's my job to do everything within my power to convert that into a conversion, basically turn it into a lead, a sale, whatever. But it's more important than ever now to make sure that content that they see and digest within the land on the site is actually timely and relevant based on the intention of what it is that they're searching. So, you know, we now have to start to take into consideration what some of these search terms are, and you know, what work out, reverse engineer it based on what people are searching on, so we can define what the user intent is going to be. Within UX for like the last 10 years, there's been this thing where we write user personas. Like, so for example, like Kieran, he's into football. He's a middle earner and a marketeer. He drives a Jaguar and he's 30, right? And we profile you just like that. But now, I'm sorry if you're 20 2, by the way, dude.
29.
I don't mean it, mate. I didn't mean it. But the point is that now what we've started to do is we've broken free from some of these traditional marketing personas, and we actually craft our customer journeys based on user intent. So we have customer groups, as in tribes of people that are going to join, that are there, like, you know, like chief executive officers, directors, people who want exec summary, that kind of thing, or marketing specialists, whatever. We group them into groups of people and then find out what their intent is. And then by understanding what their goals are, or make it even simpler, what the jobs to do. When you break the English down to jobs to do, it's a lot more simple. So what jobs to do are to be completed from this search when they land on the site, and how can we support Elliot and his team in making that migration across that invisible line just seamless, so that, because it's all about anticipation. It's about making sure that what they've anticipated in that microsecond when they move from there to there meets their expectations. And if you can just crush that 2 seconds, you're in. You're just in. Like, it's such an opinionated landscape right now. It used to be a lot more forgiving.
Yeah, I think the key thing is basically that whether we like it or not, your UX work impacts SEO performance and vice versa. So
yeah,
traditionally you didn't want to work closely alongside a UX person, but because you now have to, you want to have a web page that converts, and you have a website that's fully functioning, and you can showcase to your CEO that I've built this website that's getting us this many leads. You have to work, SEO and UX have to work together, because the technology is there to reinforce that. So
I mean, we will get onto this a little bit later, actually, to be honest, Kim, when we talk about Unity, but it's all about rallying around common shared objectives rather than individual objectives, like Joe, go and wireframe the site, Elliot, go and optimize the site to score on Google, or create a website that can be found on Google, is easy to understand, and has products clearly visible so I can buy them. Now that's an objective, and we can all rally around that together. So it's just cohesion between the teams. And, you know, again, I say, you know, the crushing of the ego. It's not true that I didn't want to work with you, Elliot. I love working with you.
I'm a bit cautious of time, guys. We've got around 13 minutes left of the webinar. So let's jump into Unity now, and let's expand a little bit more on that sort of common cause, that one goal, that unified strategy. You know, people in the comments have been saying that there's too many people involved, or there's too many cooks around the broth, or however you want to phrase it. And we've kind of touched on it throughout the hour about having that sort of common goal.
Would you be able to bring up slide 8, please, Kevin?
Of course, can.
Thank you.
Here we are.
Okay. So for me, the most important shift has been a shifting from the traditional briefing system to the actual rallying around 3 core pillars, which usually form 3 strategies or objectives, or hills as we call them. So by having the strategy at the very center of all of the team's objectives, it means that, let's say, the media team, the creative team, technical or development team, programmers is commonly known, they're all answering the same question, which means there's more synchronization in terms of the way that people perform. We've made some adjustments actually in terms of the way that the teams operate as well. So now we've broken free from the team silos and actually put them into client-focused groups or squads, which is really super useful. And we've actually worked out a way to make our scheduling process less rigid, if that makes sense. So by being less rigid and more flexible, it just kind of means that there's less back and forth. People are collaborating more closely because they're working on projects continuously. I can't emphasize enough the importance of individuals working to shared objectives, building relationships with one another, learning about the client, falling in love with the problem, and finding a solution together as a team, one team. It's really important, this one team concept, because otherwise it doesn't, let's say, work so well. And yeah, and as well as I also like to add as well is just the importance of this unified approach with the technical team as well. More often than not, you know, a lot of SEO stuff could be almost considered kind of black hat or like ad hoc. But now page speed and all sorts of other factors are laced into the overall equation, so we're all pulling in the same direction. What are your thoughts, Elliot?
Yeah, I think there's a couple more things around. If you want to be able to work closely with, and one of the questions earlier was around how the disjointed between the web development agency, the SEO agency, and maybe the content expertise that you as a business have. There's a couple of like processes that you just have to have nailed. One of them is fast communication channels. So you need to be able to talk to each other, because there's going to be a lot of touch points in building a web page or building a website. There's going to be so many touch points. Well, I'll have to ask Joe questions. Joe will have to ask me questions. And sometimes it's quite difficult across different agencies. So you need to have fast communication channels. We have Slack channels that we can speak on. We have regular cross-team updates. But you need to be able to have that really fast communication channel to be able to do these. Otherwise, the website build project process could last 5 years. The other one is kind of cross-team training. So I need to understand the basics of UX and why Joe is asking me to remove 1,000 words of content that I've tried to shove on a page. And Joe, on the other side, has to understand why I'm asking for more than a sentence of copy on the page, understand the basics of SEO. And it's one of it goes with anything, not just SEO or UX or anything. Like, you can't understand the pain points and what someone else is going through until you actually learn about their expertise and their specialism. So those are two really core principles around if you want to get teams working together. And then why they need to work together is actually the business outcomes, because we're actually on a shared goal, I guess.
Yeah, as we were saying as well, that with these shared goals, sometimes, you know, they're not as simple as we want the page to rank well on Google. We might go a little bit deeper. Like, it might be we want people to easily find the page and easily purchase something to increase conversions. For example, we might bolt on like a little something extra, and it just adds to the challenge. You know, when you actually stop looking at part of the problem, detach and look at the entire picture, it becomes a lot easier, because everyone starts pulling in the same direction rather than working in little silos.
I think that's key as well, isn't it? And I think, you know, we're going to see that a lot more as marketers are asked for their sort of contributions to the businesses as a whole. You know, in the past, we would have our little niche areas that we'd look after, and hopefully someone somewhere is pulling the pieces. But you know, by making sure that we're all actually aligning ourselves with the company's goal. You know, why would a company page want to rank? Why would a company page want to provide a good user experience for the customer? It's likely because you want to create more customers, and that's the actual goal, is creating more customers, and these things just become elements in being able to achieve that. Okay. I will just ask the audience, if you do have any final questions that you want to ask the guys, please pop them in the comments. We've got a few more minutes left. Also, just a quick shout out, if you are following us on social media as well, it's at Hallam Agency. And if there's been any key one-liners from either Elliot or Joe that you've heard, please share them on social with the hashtag #ThriveOnline as well. And definitely head over to our website at hallaminternet.com to check out some of the blogs by Elliot and Joe on UX and SEO. There's some really good reading there. Just while we're waiting for the last couple of questions to come in, I'd like to ask Elliot and Elliot first, and then Joe, I'll move on to you. What's the one thing that anyone in the audience can actually go away and implement today that will make a difference to their customer journey?
In terms of a process, it's creating the dialogue and training between what your UX and SEO teams, or whoever that might be. You might have someone who does both. You may have a creative and someone who does digital marketing, making sure they have a dialogue between one another and they understand what each other are doing. That is absolutely fundamental. And then in terms of pure SEO, it would be having enough content on the page that has a keyword focus.
Amazing. Joe, what would be your one tip?
Interrogate the brief aggressively. Now, if you, let's say the brief is, we want to increase the positioning of pages X, Y, and Z on Google. Ask yourself why. Go deeper. Find out what those pages are going to do and why you want them to appear on Google. And just think holistically about the entire problem, and maybe rewrite the brief so that you can, and that, you know, just it's a very simple thing, having a very, very simple goal or mission statement, but it's highly effective because people will never forget it. And you can always easily remind the teams or your peers, colleagues, whoever you're working with, what the goal is. Say, has the work that you've done improved my visibility in Google so that I can sell more products? No. We need to get back to work then. Nice and simple.
Amazing. We've got a question that's come in, and we'll probably wrap up after this. But feel free for any of you to answer. Something that I'm really interested in is, how is the rising importance of voice search impacting SEO and UX on websites? You know, people are now able to make purchases without even looking at a screen.
Yeah, I would say in terms of SEO, there was this predicted enormous expansion of voice search, where some of the stats are now saying by 2020, 90% of all web queries will be on voice or whatever, which is just, that hasn't happened because it's a certain type of search is voice. So it's like, what's the weather? And you met all cooking timers, music choices, a certain type of, tends to be B2C, or people can buy stuff obviously, but it's not like, you don't say Alexa, and I'm sorry if I just set off anyone's Alexa, but Alexa, can I buy Sales as a Service software, please? And then there are certain queries that work. So I think it's about understanding whether you fit into that. And if you fit into what people are asking for on their Alexas and their Google Homes, then you need to make sure your content is written and optimized for voice search, which would be having a conversational, including what people will actually be asking, stuff like that. If you're not, if you're B2B, I wouldn't really worry about it right now until you get people with massive screens in their homes where they can go through.
Can I dovetail your response, Elliot?
Yes.
I would actually say that the concern for me wouldn't be more around what's the impact on search. I'd be more interested in what the impact is on the overall experience for your customers on your website, because you're going to end up with some very, very unpredictable results, because that bit like an email client, search will not be standardized through voice. It will either go through Siri or Alexa or Google, browser, fax machine, whatever. Like, but the point is that just like Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, all the different browser variations, they all tailor and deliver the content in a slightly different way. And that's going to be a challenge that we'll probably face in the future.
Fantastic. Just before we wrap up, just a note to the audience. We have launched today the Future of Digital Marketing ebook, our 2021 edition, with lots of further information on SEO and UX and the entire digital marketing sphere as a whole. I'll pop the link in the comments now so you can see that, or go and visit our Hallam website where you can find it in the blog section. I'll tell you all now because you're here, but by downloading that ebook, you will also get invited to an online event in January with keynote speakers and our panelist of experts about the future of digital marketing as well. So please do check that out.
Good.
Listen, Elliot, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. You certainly taught me a lot about the integration and the unity approach of SEO and UX, and how this once let's say diluted relationship or tricky relationship has come together and beautifully flourished, so we can make the best of customers and consumers when they hit our websites. So thank you very much for joining me, and also a massive thank you to everyone who's joined from home. I hope that you found it useful. I hope that you can take at least one or two things away that you can go in action today. If you do have any questions or follow-up, there'll be an email going out tomorrow, just basically thanking you for attending. It's got my email in there. Please feel free to drop me a line with any further questions. And like I said, you can follow us on social as well. Guys, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thanks, Kieran.
Good.
All right. Bye, everyone. Bye.